I've put 3/4 of a cup of it in here. I'm going to add the remaining ingredients from that recipe. It says 3 cups of whole wheat or something like that. I've got plain white all-purpose flour, but I also have some whole grain rye. So I'm going to put in 2.5 cups of plain white flour and 1/2 cup of whole grain rye. Okay, here it is with white flour, rye flour. You can see the rye flour is kind of brown. Honey, salt, and 1.25 cups of water. I'm going to mix this up. Just use this dough hook. That should stir it sufficiently. So it's starting to come together. I'll probably stick my hand in there in a minute. Scrape it off with that. All right, now it says let it stand for 15, so it's been sitting for 15 minutes. Now it says do a dough hook, knead for 5 minutes. Now, in case you didn't know this, kneading with a KitchenAid stand mixer means position 2. No farther than that. It's kind of slow. 1, 2. I'm going to let that go for 5 minutes. Okay, so this has been going for 5, 6, 7 minutes. Turn it off. Lift it out. You see how it's gotten sort of sticky and wet. My hand's wet, I just did that. Slide it off the hook. Down there. We'll get all the goodness off if we want. Now this is going to go in this bowl. That's fine. Good size. I'm going to put a little oil, just some stupid old spray. You can just use some oil if you don't have any cooking spray. Just a little bit of oil, thin film. Grab this out of here. All right, there it is in the bowl. There's the mixing bowl that it came out of. You see there's a lot left. You can scrape all that off with your fingers and put it in here if you want. That little bit's not going to make a difference to your recipe, so we'll get that going. This one is in here. What we're going to do is give it a little turn or two just to get it into a reasonable ball. You'll notice if you've coated it with oil, now it's going to kind of stay in a ball like that. We'll sit it for an hour. We'll do a fold. Let it sit for an hour. We'll do a fold. We'll sit for an hour. Then we will put it in the next step. Oh, yes. Cover it loosely. I use a tea towel. Here we are. It's been resting for 1 hour in this bowl with a tea towel on the top. Look and see. It's kind of spread out. It's increased in size a bit. It's still nice and moist. So I'm going to do a couple of turn and folds on this. And here we are after, I don't know, 8 or 10 turns. Probably that's more than it really needed. But see how it's formed back up into a tight ball? So I'm going to go ahead and cover that up and give it 1 more hour and do this again. Time for the next stretch and fold. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, see, it's rising. It's getting a little bigger, which is what it's supposed to do. Let's do some stretches and folds and see how it looks. And there we are, tightened up nicely. Back for another hour of rest. Okay, we're about ready to do step 4 of the recipe, where it talks about taking it and putting it in the bowl with the seam side up and then waiting for a while. And then step 5 talks about putting it on a cookie sheet and shaping it. I have, and you can do this too with a bowl, but I have these devices, bowls, that are specifically designed for letting bread do the final rise. They're called a banneton, B-A-N-N-E-T-O-N. They're made of wicker and they're coiled. I have a round one for making round loaves. I have a boat-shaped one for making loaf-shaped ones. I am going to put this in this banneton to make a bowl, to make a round, bowl-shaped loaf of bread. So, put this one away because I don't need it. We'll come back. Now what you do with this is, you look in here, you can see it's got some flour in it. The cool thing about these is, and this is, bakers do this the world over, you dust it with flour. Many people use rice flour. I have some, actually I used my last of my rice flour, so I use regular flour this time. Rice flour has no gluten and it's very good for preventing things from sticking. So this has got a basic coat of rice flour still in here, and it stays forever. You put the bread in, you do it, and when you take it out, it has this cool little swirl on the top of it. So I'm going to put a little flour in this, and then I'm going to come back and we'll put the dough into there after a fold or two. Well, as it turned out, I did have a little bit of rice flour left, just a tiny little bit, so I spread it in here, and then all you do is just do this, and you turn it around, and you just let the flour kind of roll around like that. And it doesn't have to cover every inch or every millimeter or every anything. You just want it so that it generally doesn't stick. Let me throw this dough into the banneton, and we'll set it aside to rise. Alright, there's my dough in the banneton, and then I have sprinkled it liberally with just some white all-purpose flour. Now what the recipe says to do is to set this aside for 2 more hours. I'm going to cover it up. Remember, use liberal flour on top so it doesn't stick to your towel. And set this aside for 2 more hours. So I forgot to mention, a good place to let your dough rise is inside the oven with the light on. Do not turn the oven on, just turn on the light. It makes a nice warm spot for the dough to rise. And we'll come back in 2 hours. My 2 hours of rising in the oven is up. Time to take it out and preheat the oven. Let's take a look at this bad boy. You might want to go back and look at the video before I put it in to see how much was in this banneton, and then look now. Look at the size of that. Nicely risen. I'm going to cover it back up. Now, I'm going to take my cast iron Dutch oven, which is very heavy. Requires a couple of pizza stones. I leave them in there because they make a nice heat mass in the oven. Lower that down so the bread is working right in the middle here. Get my lid. You can leave the lid out, or you can put it on to get hot either way. Set my oven for 500. I suppose I could make it go faster, but there you go. Okay, park it up here. And when the oven is ready, I will put it in. The oven has preheated, and we're ready to go. I have a trick that I like to do, which is very helpful. There's my bread in the banneton. It is going to go into the oven that way. I have here a piece of parchment. It is narrow, it doesn't cover the whole thing. I just place it across like that. Now I'm going to take the hot Dutch oven out of the oven. Super hot. Place it over here very quickly. Place this like this. Turn it over like that. It comes right out. Look at that lovely pattern. And then I just lift this up and drop it in there. Close it back up. Into the oven. It goes. I will give this about 25 minutes. Then I will take the lid off and give it another 20 minutes after that. Hopefully, that will make a lovely loaf of bread. 20 minutes has passed. Let's take that lid off and see what we have. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. All right. Shove it back in. Knock the temperature down like I meant to do before. Let's have a look. Oh, we're ready. I can tell. I don't even have to check it, but I'll check it anyway. Let's get that bad boy out of the oven. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Remember the parchment that I put in there that made a sling? Also helps me. Or maybe not. Okay, won't lift. That's probably because it burned when I didn't set the thermostat down. See how sometimes it sticks? But it'll just come out if you pull it later. And as it cools, you can get it later. Listen. Sounds like a drum. That is a loaf of sourdough. Oh boy. Now I gotta wait to cut it. At least half an hour. You should wait till it's completely cooled. Oh look. That was good. It's been about 30 minutes, so it's cooled enough to cut. So let's go ahead and cut it. I need my hands there. Yes. Let's cut it here. That's a sample piece. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. I don't think this bread is going to survive dinner because we're all having some. Look at that. That's a beautiful loaf of bread. The beauty shot. The crumb. Enjoy.